He loves the game, he has fun with it, and he's very good at it.
I'm an agent provocateur.
Political strategist.
Controversial as you can get.
An incredible capacity for treachery.
Win-at-all-cost mentality.
When people think of Washington corruption, they think of Roger Stone.
Those who say I have no soul, those who say I have no principles, are losers. Those are bitter losers.
さあそういうことで先週に引き続きアメリカ政治のすべてを知り尽くしているトランプ大統領を生み出した男ロジャー・ストーンさんインタビュー第2弾盛大な拍手を
It is hard to see America is collapsing. It's so hard.
But that's exactly what is happening. However, we are the country's growing increasingly violent. Gasoline prices, which were at their lowest point ever under Donald Trump, we no longer had to get any fuel, gas or oil from Saudi Arabia, from the Middle East, or from Venezuela. There's enough oil underneath American soil to fuel this country for the next 100 years. But Joe Biden turned off our major pipelines, and gasoline prices are astronomical. But when you go to the grocery store, half the shelves are empty. There's certain foods you can no longer find. I'll give you a simple example. Chicken wings, which used to be very inexpensive and plentiful. You can't find them anymore. They're not available. Inflation of the American dollar is extraordinary. I went to the supermarket to buy a steak. Well, it wasn't really a steak. It was really 2 bites of a steak, and it cost me $12. The cost of food, the cost of electricity, the cost of gasoline, the cost of prescription drugs, these things are skyrocketing beyond the reach of the average American. We have 370,000 homeless military veterans in this country, which we do nothing about. But we have now sent close to $81 billion to fight a war in Ukraine, where our inherent interests are not clear. They tell us that we are fighting for democracy, but in Ukraine, all political parties except for the party of the president are outlawed. All the candidates who ran for president in the last election and lost have been jailed. Reporters, journalists are arrested if they criticize the government. The newspapers, radio stations, television stations are closed down. And now the Russian Orthodox Church, the largest church in the country, has been banned, and priests and bishops are being arrested. So we're clearly not fighting for democracy.
Right.
The government in Ukraine is just as authoritarian as the government in Russia. In the United States, if you criticize in the war in Ukraine, they accuse you of being pro-Russian. They accuse you of being a puppet for Vladimir Putin, which is ridiculous because the Russian system is just as authoritarian and just as anti-democratic as what is going on in Ukraine. Very recently, you may have read that a number of highly classified secret documents have leaked from the Defense Department, from the State Department, and for other branches of government. What those documents show is that what the American people are being told about the progress of the war in Ukraine is false. The Ukrainians are not kicking the daylights out of the Russians. The Russians are kicking the daylights out of the Ukrainians. Ukraine is running out of ammunition, even with the $81 billion. Well, how could that be? Well, I can explain that to you. Billions of those dollars have been stolen and have been funneled back to politicians in the United States. The media here tells us every day how Ukraine is winning this war, but people I speak to in our military and these documents indicate that the Ukrainians probably will not be able to sustain an offensive in the fall. And therefore, we are closer and closer and closer to World War III and the use of thermonuclear wars. This is the biggest threat facing not only the United States, but facing the world. And the Biden administration, they are the provocateurs in this war. They, for example, will not even allow peace talks to begin. I honestly believe that if Trump were still president, there would be no war. Trump told Putin directly that if he invaded Ukraine, that we would directly attack Moscow. And I don't think he was kidding. And I don't think Putin thought he was kidding. Trump also told the Chinese that if they attacked Taiwan, we would launch an attack on Peking. They did not think he was kidding because he was not kidding. Unpredictability in the conduct of foreign affairs is a great asset. No world leader fears Joe Biden. After the disastrous withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan and the decision to bomb the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which I think there's growing evidence was done by the United States. He's a joke on the world stage. He doesn't know what day of the week it is. He's disoriented. He can barely speak. Sometimes he makes no sense at all. No one, unless you're the most partisan Democrat, no one really believes that he is running the country. Most people believe that former President Barack Obama is really running the country, running our foreign policy, running our domestic policy, and that Joe Biden, he's not feared around the world, nor is he respected around the world. And I think this has hurt the country very badly.
So you were the very one who strongly encouraged Donald Trump, who was very successful in business, to run for president. And that's how much you might have thought that U.S. needed him, right? Isn't it? But what though exactly did you see in him? I think there is a world of difference between being a success in business and to hold the office of president of the United States. What did you actually see?
I think actually we would be much better off if we took the principles necessary for building and running a billion-dollar business, and we did use those in government. In other words, I thought that politics is too important to be left to politicians. So what I saw in Trump, first of all, was incredible strength. He's a very strong man. He's a very tough man. I worked for President Richard Nixon. He's a very great man. I worked for Senator Bob Dole, another very great man. They were both very tough men. But Donald Trump is tougher than either. I saw independence. Trump is a Republican, but he's for America first and a Republican second. I think he's a Christian first. I think he's an American second. I think he's a Republican third. But to him, it's just a label. More importantly, he believes in putting America first in all the policies regarding America. The first question he asks himself is this good for America? Not, is this good for our allies? Not, is this good for our enemies? But is this good for America? So in Trump, I saw a number of things. Independence. He was not connected in any way to the endless foreign wars that both Republicans and Democrats have pursued. He was opposed to the war in Iraq. He was opposed to the war in Afghanistan. I also knew that as a billionaire, you could not buy him. You couldn't bribe him. You couldn't influence him. He didn't need your money, and therefore he could be completely independent. And then there is just the question of size. I don't mean physical size, but I mean presence. He is a very charismatic figure. He's very interesting. He's very dynamic. When Trump is in the room, you know he's in the room. So he has the presence that I think in the media age is absolutely necessary. I worked for Ronald Reagan. I find that he and Trump are very similar in many ways, in terms of their bearing and in terms of their stature and in terms of their focus on the bigger picture of issues as opposed to the minutia. When Jimmy Carter was president, he personally controlled the schedule for the White House tennis courts. That's not what you want in a president. You want a president who is focused on the larger questions, war and peace, the larger questions of how to make a boom economy. Under Trump, America had the strongest economy in our history. We had the strongest rate of job creation. We had the highest rate of wage increases. We had the lowest levels of unemployment among all Americans, Black Americans, white Americans, Asian Americans, men, women, older people, younger people. It was the greatest economic time in American history. When Trump was elected president, our manufacturing industries had really died. Most manufacturing was being done outside the country. And Barack Obama said to Donald Trump, how are you going to bring back these manufacturing jobs? Are you just going to wave a magic wand and think they'll come back? But the combination of cutting taxes and cutting regulations, there were almost 850,000 new manufacturing jobs created in the United States. So this idea that America cannot make things anymore is just false. And Trump he is a very complicated individual. And I've known now for 40 years that he is not handled, he is not managed, he is not scripted. He is his own man. He makes his own decisions. You can't just say to him, oh, Mr. President, here are your talking points. Just stick to this. Here's what you should say, and you'll be fine. Does he ask for advice? Yes, he asks for advice. Does he listen? Yes, he listens. Does he always take your advice? No, not always. Sometimes he might take some of your advice, but not all of it. Sometimes he might take none of your advice. But the only thing that is completely predictable about Donald Trump is that he is completely unpredictable. And that's what made him a great leader on the world stage in terms of foreign affairs.
素晴らしい。
いやトランプさんに何を見たのかってあれば本当にさ、僕も今トランプさんとかあとデサンティスさんとかと比較してね、前もちょっと言ったんだけど、完全に彼はもう独立してて、誰からも買収されたりしないから、全然デサンティスさんとは全く比べ物にならないと思うと、グローバリストと戦えないと彼みたいな人じゃないとって言ってたんだけど、彼はそういうのも見たんだね、昔のトランプさんの中に億万長者だから、すごい大事な視点ですよね。こういう人だからこそ今巨大な敵と戦えるっていう面も本当にあると思うんですよね。
いや
面白いね。とにかく、44年トランプさんの、親友だからね。ということで、次回にも続きます。お楽しみに。さあ、そういうことで、
ここで
お知らせ。
ヘブニーズからの大事なお知らせですよ。はい、私たちはですね、もう本当にいつ番組ごとなくなるか分かりません。ですのでね、ぜひ皆さんこれ本当に大事なんです。ヘブニーズ 1.0 から 9.0 までぜひご登録お願いいたします。そうすれば私たちがどこに行っても分かります。そしてですね、削除動画も含めて全ての番組はこちらの新しいサイトからとなっておりますのでね、
こちらの方も全部あるからね。
こちらの方もプラスでチェックしてください。
そう、ここに全部ほら、なんださ、パロディソングとか全部ありますからね。でこうほらクライマックスとか並んでたりとか見やすくなってますから。
登録してこれがあれば大丈夫です。
さあ、そしてフォーラムっていうのがあるの、ここにね、皆さん意見かけるところです。今日は番組終わってからヘブニーズのマネージャーのしーちゃんっていう名前で書く、マネージャーのしーちゃんっていうのが書き込みますから、マネージャーに返信する形で今日の感想をお願いします。
しーちゃんはね、もともとシナリオライターをやってたんです。
そうそう、もともとだってね、某キー局の構成作家だったからね、テレビ局の。さあ、
どんなこと書いてくれるのかな。
ちょっと今日は二次会があります。
イエイ。二次会集まってね。
そうです。そしてグローバリストとの戦いとかね、今これからの世の中の流れが驚くほど腑に落ちるという大好評の聖書的な視点で世界のを読み解くバイブルリアリティ、今週ありますよ。
今週ですね。
この彼が言ってることも含めてロジャー・ストーンさん、バイブルリアリティに参加していただくとよりよく分かるようになりますということで、来たれバイブルリアリティ。